All right, so for tonight, the main modeling project, which we're going to be moving on with, is using the loft command. Now, so far we've been doing very direct extrusions and revolves, things like that, either to create new bodies, to cut into things, such like that. But tonight what we're going to do is use the loft tool. So if I drop down here and select loft, gives you a quick overview of what it is. Basically, as it says, it creates a transitional plane between transitional shape rather between two or more sketch profiles or planar surfaces on separate planes. So they're different on different planes. They're separated away from one another. So far, we've been basically sketching like on a plane or on a surface, things like that. In this case, we'll be sketching across space from one another. But what loft will do is it will create a three-dimensional shape from one to the other based off of either end. Now, can you stack more sketches into that? Yes, absolutely. But think of this tool as essentially a fit point spline that works in a three-dimensional space. Where a fit point spline, you're picking points and such, and it creates a manipulatable curve between those points. Less manipulatable rather. But a loft will create a body between those profiles, transitioning from one into the other. And you can create some pretty complex shapes with that. It can also cause a lot of headaches, but then you figure out some ways around that. So what that basically allows us to do is create shapes that curve from one to the other. And in this case, we're just going to be making a kind of rounded vessel. Now, so far we have done things like creating a vessel out of with the revolve tool, with extrude, stuff like that. But those are all very much radially symmetrical or symmetrical in some degree. Now, this is of course symmetrical side to side and such, but it is not even. And this is just a soap bottle. Actually, this is a bottle of Murphy soap. So this is certainly not the best showing of what a loft can do, but it can also give you some good examples. So basically what it is, and in this case, I've created multiple sketches, and I'll show you those, on construction planes. And what construction planes are planes just away from our starting origin planes. And you're going to create those on the major features of the bottle. So somewhere at the bottom, obviously, somewhere where the next major transition is, next transition, and then upwards to the top. Now, for this project, we are going to also be creating two separate components, one the bottle and then the cap, and we'll be using a joint to connect those two, but we'll also be adding threads to the bottle. Now, so far, to bring in like any kind of like screwable hardware, we've been on like importing or inserting that hardware from the McMaster car extension. In this case, we've actually created threads on the bottle as well as on the cap. So you would actually, if you printed these, you would actually be able to thread them together. So this is how you can create actual threaded objects in Fusion, print them out, and it will actually function as a threaded thing. Now you can of course make custom threads, but in this case, we're going to be using the built-in threading tool within Fusion. The additional aspect will be that this also will have a joint, so you can lift the bottle up, twist, and also show you how to create like those features, things like that. Now, one other thing about this project is what is not shown here is you will also be adding a handle of some sort, and that will go over several similar tools of like loft. We have the pipe tool, which creates a round, square, or triangular shape along a path, which is just a line, a sketch line. A sweep, which is using a profile of your own design along a path, or loft can actually be pushed along a path as well. So multiple different uses for very similar tools. Now that I don't have an example of right here, but just to give you a much more simple idea of what a loft is and what it can do, got a couple examples here, and this is essentially a loft. This is a very simple one in that, let's activate this component, blow it up. You'll see there's construction planes, sketches, and such. Let's hide the body. open up the sketches and show you the construction planes. So what I've done is on the origin plane, if I'm going from looking at front or rather perspective, on the origin plane, there's a circle. I created a construction plane floating up above that, and then I created a rectangle on that. The loft tool will then create a transition body between those. So you can see it is square, or rather rectangular, and sharp angled on top, smooth on the bottom. If I go to switch my visual style to shaded with hidden edges, it doesn't show any extras. I thought it would show the other ones. That's perfectly fine. But what I could always do is then go in, well, as we've done before, can always edit sketches, things like that. And so let's say up top here, instead of leaving those angular, I could go in and then say, you know what, I'd actually like those to be rounded already. So let's say, I don't know, 10, sure. Without hitting enter, I'm going to go around, connect the two, or connect all four. Or rather, tell you what, we'll just leave 3 of them just to show as an example of what can happen. Hit finish sketch, it will recalculate that loft. And now at the bottom, you can see that it transitions much more smoothly into one, and that one corner, it transitions from a rounded shape to an actual point. So it's really just being able to play with different profiles, moving from one to another. That's pretty much it. So let's have a look at the actual assignment. So the assignment goes, and this is going to be due on, oops, I forgot to edit that part. This is going to be due next week. It's a simple one, but this will be a soft due date. So I don't expect, if you're able to do this, awesome, but we will address stuff and such next week, in that there's obviously some tools we've been working with, but there's a lot we've already, or there's some we're going to start working with. There's also a lot we've already been working with. But essentially, we're going to work through this, but we'll introduce some more next week because we're just going to play a little bit. So this is a lofted bottle with a handle and cap. So new 2 components, handle, joint, all that sort of thing. Requirements is it has to be a lofted vessel form. So that means at least 2 components, the body and the cap. Needs to have a joint, so between the screw down cap. You want to thread both the bottle and the cap. Very simple. It's all handled in a single, or those are each handled in their own single tool command. Needs to have some sort of a handle. Even if your original model bottle doesn't have a handle, we're going to add a simple handle onto it. Not saying it has to be complex or anything, just want to be able to show you that. And then again, assign appearances. So you're going to go through measuring, like I said, major components. So find a bottle, not something that is just fully in the round. That would have just been like a revolve tool. Try to find something that's more or less like this. Does not have to be exactly this. Main tools, obviously the loft tool. Using offset construction planes, we're going to be using the shell tool, which we played a little bit around with the container in hollowing out the bottle, or sorry, hollowing out one of the sides. We're going to do the same with the bottle. It's an automatic way of just hollowing out a form. Well, you can use whichever of these you choose, be it the pipe, rail sweep, or loft tool to create a handle for it. Joint, obviously, and creating threads. So let's go about actually working with this. Switch back over to Fusion. All right, so we've got our example, going through the basics. Pretty much you're going to just start one by measuring out what are my major areas. Now, in this example, this actually ended up having to be multiple separate lofts, because if we tried to loft everything as one piece, and I'll circle back in time here, I had to create multiple sections, because if you try to make kick-ins and such, it will create really weird things. And from that, I was able to just make a couple of rounds, connect everything by just joining, and then join the main bottle and such. So this bottle ended up not being the best example, but it's a good example. So if we're trying to do a more decent example and actually show you some stuff, let's move on. All right, let's start a new project, and we will save. example in the class lofted, oops, lofted bottom. Okay, so where do we start? Now I'm going to kind of play around with some stuff because I want to be able to show you all a better example than what this direct bottle would be. As you can see, that's not really going to be as effective just because it has a little bit too many flat spots and such, but we're going to work with something anyway. I would like you to find an actual example of a bottle because it's going to help you actually take dimensions. Not that those are imperative, but it will absolutely help. So first, we take an overall dimension here. How tall is this thing? This bottle, just looking at it straight on. All right, so that's going to be 22 millimeters or 220 millimeters. That's tall. Okay. So we have our origin plane, which creates just right there. And I would create a sketch there. But first, what I like to do personally is I like to set up all of my construction planes first, just so that way I can kind of keep an order to this, because that is going to be one major thing with this project is it is very easy to get kind of discombobulated in this because there's a bunch of repeating and literally stacked sketches. It's kind of easy to get those out of order. And with the loft tool, it is imperative that you actually keep a progression as you select stuff. I'll show you all in a second. So for now, let's just say, all right, I decided this bottle is 220 millimeters tall. But what I want to do is measure from the bottom to the next segment, and the next segment, and the next segment. So for the first one, it is about 25 millimeters tall. So up on the toolbar, all the way to the right, you'll see construct. Now, down at the bottom, if you open the drop down, there's a whole bunch of options. Right now, we're just going to be using the basic offset construction plane. All this is literally a plane, which is just an imaginary, flat, potentially infinite space away from whatever oriented plane you choose. So right now, we're working on the XY axis. Let's move it up 25 millimeters from the XY axis. Now I have a plane there. So I now have a new drop down on my hierarchy tree, construction, plane 1. Now I'm going to keep adding these. Construction plane from the bottom. Now I'm going to keep adding from the bottom because you can keep stacking from the most recent plane and then progress from there, but it's really easy to lose your position again. So I'm going to measure from the bottom up to the next, and that is 150 millimeters. So from there, okay. Next one is, let's say, 165. Remember, you don't have to keep going up and selecting that. You can right click and go to your recent tool. Select there, 165. And you see each time, the planes are getting bigger. That doesn't mean anything. It is merely showing you that they are different as a way for you to visually see that they are different. If they're all the same size, it's even easier to lose track of what they are or what they are. And from the top or from the bottom to the neck is, let's say, 190. One more. Oops, not what I meant. Dang. 190. There we are. And for this, we can measure from the very bottom to the very top, but we're not really going to use that dimension, but we'll say anyway, just to give myself a placeholder, that was the original 220. All right, so if I zoom out, now you can see there's this floating stack of construction planes. That just helps lay out everything. If you want to work one plane, do a sketch, one plane, do a sketch, one plane, do a sketch, more power to you. I like to set up my dimensions so that, or I like to set up my construction planes based off of elevation dimensions, just as good placeholder. Now, the other thing is, well, do I need construction planes? Couldn't I just make a sketch and just move it into position? Yeah, of course. But for a parametric modeling method, now while this isn't necessarily parametric, but more of a more effective way of modeling, let's say I make my bunch of sketches, or rather, if I snap back over here to, again, my dimensions, make a bunch of sketches, and then I decide, oh, I needed to have moved, or that plane there should have been 162 instead of 165. Well, then you have to go in, carefully measure and move that actual sketch with the move tool so many millimeters or so. If I'm using a construction plane, I can just go to that plane and say, oh, okay, that one, right click on the plane, edit feature, and then instead of 150, that's where I type in 125 or something like that. Recalculates everything. Now, this is going to screw up this drawing, but if I do that, like I said, it's gonna mess it up. Yep, and it froze it. I don't know if this computer is like updating or something like that, but it is just like super bogging down tonight. Let me pause the video while it does that. All right, there it is. So you can see right there what happened there is it just changed that dimension. Now this messes up this whole drawing because of how it was created, but being able to just move the construction plane around makes it so much easier to work with your models here. So I just Control Z that and we'll cancel out of that. So, all right. So I know from there, I need to be able to work on these construction planes. All right. Let's save. Construction planes made. All right. So let's take some dimensions from the bottom. Now this is a somewhat more oval shape. So it's not rectangular, but we're going to start with a rectangle. It is about 45, 48 millimeters by 85. Okay. So what that means is start a sketch, work on the origin plane, and this is where we're just going to establish basically everything. So start with center rectangle, center circle, stuff like that. Keep it smack on the origin point. As you get more advanced in your modeling experience, yeah, totally build them out of the place and all around. But if we're just keep building a single object in this one project space, just keep it right in the center. It makes everything a lot easier. All right. So I said it was 85 wide by, or 85, yeah, 85 wide by about, let's say 45 deep. I know I didn't say 45 originally, but there we are. All right. Now I want to go ahead and round this out a little bit. Let's just say 8 millimeters. Okay, that's more my round. Don't hit enter. Keep snapping around. Beep boppity boop. Round it out. Okay. And that's it. First sketch done. So this is going to get really tedious at first, but it's repeating the same set of tools. Okay, next set. Create sketch. Next construction plane up. There we are. I want to do another center rectangle because that's what that one is. Starting out. Now let's just say this is a little bit wider because it kind of is. So let's say it is 85 wide, but this one is 50 deep. Okay, great. And again, I'm just kind of playing with the dimensions just to give you all a better idea of how this stuff works. Again, rounding things over. Let's say 10 again. Now, if these construction planes get in your way visually, you can hide them and then just move along. But now you see how I've created one. Enter, finish sketch. Floating just slightly above, it is larger. So if I look straight on, it's not exactly the same size. It's a little bit deeper. That's what we're going with. Okay. Now with this next one, now technically, what the problem is I'm going to run into is I took a measurement from the bottom to about the top of that shoulder. However, what you actually also will need is a construction plane from right there, that little shoulder, to that little indent where it actually kicks in. I need that to round over. Now, a loft might be the better option, or it might be better made, in this case, if I was trying to make it more accurate, it might end up being better as starting just one loft and then putting a heavy fillet on the top, rounding that over, and then starting a second loft from the next plane. So that'll be something we address. But in this case, let's just say, for the sake of keeping with what we're doing, let's just make another construction plane saying, okay, I actually needed that to be right there. And how high was that? That was about there. You can, of course, drag up. All right, that was 25. Let's just say that is at 30. Okay. So let's just say there. Start another sketch. on that. There we are. Again, rectangular. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Now, don't forget, if you need to, you could always, since we're working just straight up and down, you could always just take a projection of the previous sketch and offset things like that. So you can find ways of speeding this along. You don't have to make individual sketches each time, every time, always different. You can always do something like that. So I'll tell you what, we'll do exactly that. We'll cancel out of that, use the project tool, press P. I'll select that line there, select OK. Now I have, they move around. You can see because it's purple, I know it's a projection line, but what I want is an offset of that line. Of course, because it's projection, you have to select every freaking one of the lines. All right. And let's just move that inward. Let's just say it's about -3. Yeah, sure, that works. Let's go a bit further. Say -5. Again, I'm kind of just playing around with these dimensions. Okay, so now that is the construction sketch we're going to work with, or the construction line sketch we're going to work with. Okay, next one up. And this is the part that gets just really tedious. New sketch, way up here. Cool. Now, since this bottle is essentially a straight line from one to the next, all right, yeah. Why draw another one entirely? I can take a projection of that sketch, duplicate it up here just by pressing P, or again, I use the drop down, go to project, include, project. That's where the tool is. Hit OK. Bam, done. There's my sketch right there. I don't need to add anything else to it. Excellent. All right. Next construction plane up, another sketch. Yeah, like I said, this gets really tedious. All right. This time, this bottle goes back out. So let's use that line there. I project it again. Make it simple. If you can, let the program do your work for you. There you go. I just made a duplicate of that line there up top here. Easy peasy. Cool. All right. And up top is where it starts getting smaller. So from here, finish sketch, start the next, right there. Oh, let's use project, but then I'm going to make this a bit smaller anyway. Let's duplicate that one there. Yep. All right. Okay. But from here, I want to shrink that a good amount because it is much smaller. Offset. And won't let me just do that. So circle around, select all the things, and won't let me do it anyway. You have to select them individually. Ugh. I don't know why it does that with offset, or rather projected lines. It's very irritating. Let's move that inward. Sure, -8, let's say, from there. Great. So that's the line I actually want to use. But I do want to put a pretty heavy fillet on that because this is starting to get pretty rounded here. 6? Sure, we'll go 6. There we go. Okay. Now, I will warn you, all these outside projected lines, that is going to get really confusing. So if you're using projections and such, I'd recommend selecting all those. Whoops. I don't know if it'll let me do this. Yes. Come on. I want to just change those to construction lines so they don't interfere with anything. I'm going to select all those lines and then just press X, or over on line type, switch to construction. Good. Yeah, it does. All right. So all that did is just made those. Oops, I missed one. Just made that line. It's not letting me do that one for whatever reason. There we go. Oh, because it was also the sketch line. Well, or the dimension line. Well, that's just confusing. There we go. So now, even though that's a closed shape, I can't accidentally select that as one of my profiles. Select OK. All right. Now, the last one is going to be, because this is a bottle, going to be a circle. All right. Select the last sketch there. Although I think I already messed this up because that was supposed to have been one lower, but that's all right. We'll make it happen. All right, so that's a circle. Let's see, how big is that? Now, I actually want to know how big the cylinder inside is. So unscrew the cap, take a measurement off of that. Yeah, it's 25. Hey, what do you know? Let's call it 24 so it's no bigger than that. Okay. Finish sketch. Tiny. All right. Save. Profile. Sketches. Save. Zoom back out. All right. Now I can see the stack of different profiles. Now, like I said, there are going to be some problems with this because of how this bottle functions, and that it's a straight up bottle. You will probably do better with finding something that's like rounder or more direct, that sort of thing. That's okay. Let's deal with those problems as they come. All right. So now I'm going to use Loft Tool. So go to Create, Loft. Now, as you're using Loft, one thing is extremely important. Select your profiles in order. You cannot select jumping around because it functions off of the previous sketch. Because it creates a form, it creates a body, it transitions from one to the next. So it's going to transition from one to the next one you select. So if you skip sketches, you cannot go back. However, what you can do is simply use the plus and X sign here on the profiles of the toolbox, and that's how you can step back. So if you accidentally select the wrong one, that's okay. Just edit it out. It's just more of that you can't select one above and then select the next one below and then go back up and down and up and down and up and down. That's not how this works. You have to select in order. But if you accidentally select the wrong one, you can just hit X on here and it'll delete the previous selection. So, all right, let's start at the bottom. Selecting there. I'm going to zoom in, select that profile. See, it's just a straight line right now. It's basically an extrusion. Next one is I accidentally made this, or I should have made this other profile here a construction line. So just be careful. Select that inner one. Okay. Now you can see how much that changed. They created a pretty round profile from there. Great. Now, if I keep selecting, see what happens here. It's going to start doing some weird stuff. The operation might be meaningful shape change. Okay. I don't know what's going on with that. That's weird. Why am I getting that error? I don't know. Okay, great. Nothing like something screwing up right off the bat. Well, let's see about this sketch here. That is, get that out of the way. Which sketch is that? There we are, that one. Go down, edit sketch. I'm not sure why that is giving me that error. That's weird. Tell you what, let's go ahead and again, move around. Let's create. Select all of these edge lines. I know this part gets very tedious. And let's make that into a construction line. Okay. Let's see if that helps. All right, let's try the loft again. I don't know why it failed or whatever that was. Select one, next. All right, there we go. Looks like that. It looks like it was that because it was an offset from the projection. Looked like it was giving me trouble. Select the next. Okay, what's going on here? I don't know why it's just utterly failing. I mean, it could be making some weird stuff, but it shouldn't be just failing. Awesome. Nothing like stuff just not working when you're trying to demonstrate how to do stuff. Let's try from the top down. I'm just curious to see if those projection lines are messing things up. So let's create them from there, from there, from there. Okay. Okay. Okay, really weird. I don't know why it's working perfectly fine from the top down, but not the bottom up. That's a new one to me. I don't know. I'm hoping that because it's being wonky tonight, maybe it's just a bug in whatever. I know the program just updated, so that's a new one to me. All right. So obviously that don't look like this. It's the dimensions, but not really. Now I did omit this top, the actual bottle cap, because that's going to be a straight cylinder. We're going to work with that in a minute. So basically I'm working with what anything below the cap and down. So this is one of the things you might run into. If this happens in that this is not at all the shape you were trying to create, it's an interesting shape, I'll give it that, but that's not what I'm trying to create. So what I have found, what you'll have to do is basically create multiple lofts, separate lofts, and then join them together. So let's back up a little bit. So I'm just pressing the X button and backing up. Okay, so from there, from the top down, this is where I kind of messed up. That should have been 2 different ones. Pretty close. But if you also decide, all right, well, that one profile is messing with me, well, then go back, deselect profile that wasn't working for you. Now you can just omit that and go right down in. Ooh, that really did some weird stuff. So this is kind of one of the things with the loft. It works really well for the most part. Sometimes it does some really weird things too. So we're going to work with close enough with this with the dimensions on this project, because you're going to end up with a lot of stuff like this. So all right, so I'm going to say that's one loft. Click OK. That made the top. Now let's do another loft, and I'll create the bottom, hopefully without the error. So starting at the bottom, moving up through the profiles. Okay. From there to there, from the next up, that's where it was giving me trouble. Okay. Now I have to make the middle. So create a loft, which in this case, between 2 profiles is essentially, or 2 of the same profiles is essentially an extrusion. So whatever, but that's what we're going to work with. And of course, because how Fusion works, it hid all of my sketches. So let's just unhide all of those. That always gets frustrating. So now from that plane, or that profile to that profile, more of just a straight loft. Now, loft does have the operation bar in here. So now it assumes that because those are already connecting, I want to join those, and I do. So when I do this, as I look down, multiple bodies, select OK, brings it all into one. Great. All right, so now I have a lofted vessel. Great, that's pretty much what we're trying to do. Now, however you need to go about building yours out, if you're able to do everything in one loft, awesome. If the model you are working with is just not cooperating, you might have to make multiple lofts and then just join them separately. That is okay. All right. So to complete this model, I need to create from there to there. Now, like I said, I did mess up my dimensions here. I really need to go back and fix this, and I might have to just do that. Ultimately, because this part to here should have been a straight cylinder. So we'll see. But what we're needing to do, the reason I didn't include either the cap, because that's gonna be something different entirely, but where the threads are and such here, we're not going to worry about duplicating like bottle threads, because much like mason jars, those actually have their own proprietary threads. Now, what that means is they're not a standard like pipe thread or screw thread or something. They're often, it's kind of an industry standard, but that doesn't mean they all actually match. So don't worry about trying to actually accurately model the threads on a bottle cap. We're going to go with basic threads, but we're going to treat this top here as a cylinder. Just a direct cylinder. Now, I've already decided that's 24 millimeters wide. How tall is that part? 20. Great. It's actually more like 18. So what I'm going to do with that is at the top of the bottle here. Now, you can either start a new sketch or just create a cylinder. You'll get the same thing because we're just creating a straight cylinder. At the top, right in the center, we're going to go to, what did I say it was? 24. That's right up. Okay. And then up was 22. Operation join, because it's already connecting to something. Awesome. So that makes things so much easier. Okay. Now I've got 2 steps here to create both the threads and the hollow out. It's not always going to be the same way, or the same steps, one and then the other, because sometimes cutting threads will cause issue with the shell tool. So I'm going to show you the thread tool. Then we're going to show you the loft, or sorry, I'm sorry, the shell tool, and we'll see if that works. If it does, awesome. If not, you might need to reverse those because one can cause issues with the other. So, all right, we'll go to create and just cycle down until you see where's threads. I'm staring right at it. Oh, I'm gonna modify. What the heck? Where's my thread tool? Oh, staring right at it, just not seeing it. Awesome. Always good. So just thread. All right. So you have your toolbox pop up. And what you do is just select the face of that cylinder right there. Operation would cause large topography change. That's okay. So let's see. Okay. What's the problem? Try adjusting the values, input geometry. Cool. Another one that I have not run into before. What is going on tonight? Yeah, I know. Just make it. It's fine. Okay, cool. I don't know why it's giving me this error. More crap that it's never come up before. Tell you what, let's see if just what might be causing the trouble is because the two things are joined. Let's try to troubleshoot. So I'm going to go back to the edit feature of the cylinder there. I'm going to select new body instead of join. Select OK. Let's see what that does. Sometimes because things are joined, they interfere or they interact with one another. Let's try that. So go to thread, select there. All right, there we go. That's what the problem was. It's because they were already joined. All right, so you can see a couple things here. You can see this kind of light highlighting of the threading here. Now it's going to auto-generate based off of the dimensions you've inputted, meaning off of the diameter, or in this case, the radius of the cylinder shape. Now, if you have a slower computer or if you find it's bogging down, leave it as is. It still will register as threads, but it won't really show them fully. There's a checkbox below that says modeled. Select that. It's going to fully model the threads. And you can see why I mean that. It's just going to create a lot more geometry. It's going to create a lot more points for this for your computer to figure out. So that can cause a problem. If it does, just uncheck the modeled and it'll still show as threaded. It won't fully model them. So in this case, I'm going to do that. Let it go. Super duper. Okay. Select OK. It's going to generate that. Let's save. Threaded top. All right. Now in this case, what I would do is now go to join. So the target body is my main body and join is my threaded cap. Join, click OK. All right, now they're joined again. So that was the problem. You see, when I look in close, see how far those threads cut into that bottle or that form. That's why it was giving me that error. But we're going to probably trigger another error here. So let's see what happens. The next thing is to hollow out the body. It's a bottle, not just a solid shape. We want to hollow it out. The best way to do that is to use the shell tool. We kind of played with this in the last project, but basically it makes a hollow space built as an offset from the external dimensions. So it's a really cool thing. It's an offset tool just in a three-dimensional version. So select there. Now what you want to do is you need to select what will become the open face, and that's what it builds the shell around. What face you select becomes open, and from there it hollows out everything else. Now the threads here are going to cause a problem. Let's say it needs to be 3 millimeters thick. I don't know, that sounds reasonable-ish. But because it's generating everything off of the outermost profile, that's where this becomes an issue. So what might have to happen is either, let's see, I can't quite see it as clearly, and this also becomes a problem here. Visual style, visible edges only. All right, yeah. See, it is creating a shell down inside, but it's kind of also working off those threads there. So you can get some weird stuff. Now, I don't care how thick this ends up being. If you need to make it a little bit thicker just so it works, that's okay. We're not looking for a minimum maximum here. If this needs to be your walls need to be slightly thicker, that's not a problem. 4 millimeters was apparently much too much for that offset tool. So 3 is where it's at. Let it recalculate again. So usually 2 or 3 millimeters as a wall thickness works for the best. Go with that. That's a nice general number. I don't know. Honestly, that actually looks like it's doing okay. Normally it will, or I usually have it run into problems. And when I do that, go away. Keep getting error messages from the computer too. If that happens, what you end up having to do is just back up. So select OK. What I end up just having to do is apply the shell tool before the threads. So it often ends up as if you end up with different error messages, unlike the ones I was getting, you sometimes just have to shuffle the operation of either put the shell before the threads or after. That's all. So in this case, it seems like it's working okay. So, okay, all right, great. That pretty much works. So that is essentially a threaded bottle. All right, great. Let's hide all those sketches. Super duper. Yeah, that's pretty wonky because, like I said, I misstepped. I should have created that cylinder, or this circle up here was actually intended to be the very top. So just be careful in where you're making your profile parts. All right. Now, I did mess up here because this is supposed to be 2 different components, or this is supposed to be its own component. We're just going to leave it on the regular piece, so that's the full project, but we do need to start a new component. So make sure the whole project is selected, new component, label it, cap. Now the cap is painfully simple. The cap is, we're just using a cylinder tool, a shell tool, and then a thread tool to create the hollow space inside, and then use the thread tool to literally thread it. Now, main thing is, if you need to write this down, do so. Make sure you remember how thick of a cylinder your top there is. That was 24 millimeters. If you need to write it down, that's fine. You can always take a measurement off of it later, whatever. But I find it easiest, start a sketch on the top here. So you can see it ghosting out there. I just want to select that uppermost edge, select there, that's fine. Or you can start a cylinder. In this case, I'm going to start a sketch, center circle, drawing outward. Now, I can either create this 24 millimeters there, and I do need to make this larger, or I can end up with or I can do an extrusion with sketches. So just going to show you the sketch way, and then the cylinder way. Now I do need to make a wall. Basically, this is going to be what is the innermost dimension, because this is aping this cylinder here that is threaded. So need to make another circle right there, and right on top, right in the center. That was 24. Let's say, oh yeah, I can always also take a dimension off of that, can't I? That's nearly 30. So let's just call it 30. Give ourselves plenty of space. Okay, and that's it. So I can create those sketches, or I could have just gone straight to create cylinder right there, because I'm going to extrude. Oops, I don't know why it's creating that. That's weird. Oh, tell you what, hide those bodies. There you go. That's why it's doing weird things. Hidden sketches and such. All right, so apparently that caused a problem because I drew the sketch I drew my dimensions and such while that body was still visible. The way Fusion works, it sometimes will capture like basically the ghost of the previous body, because they were sketch elements to that, like the threads, stuff like that. It captured that. This is the kind of crap that you end up running into that just makes you want to pull your hair out, because this is the kind of stuff of why is it making these things, and it causes problems. Anyway, yeah. So now, because I created the sketches and such, I'm basically dealing with the ghost of that other bottle, or of the other body. So fine, we're just going to deal with that as it is. Okay. So this is again 20 millimeters tall. Cool. I would recommend making it a little bit taller. So if it was 20, let's make it 22. Okay. Because as I unhide the bottle, you can see I just want this to be at least as tall, if not a little bit taller than this. And actually, it looks like I could have made this bigger. But again, you can always go back in and tweak that. That's all right. All right. So this is doing with the sketch and extrusions. Let me hide this vessel. Now, because I created this with sketches, I got two options. I can either, again, extrude, since I got all these damn ghost things in here, that's causing me problems. I can extrude upward and create a cut, which, again, if we're going to do stuff to object to the top, and let's say an offset of 2. Oh, -2. Sure. That just makes it so it makes it hollow in there. Click OK. There you go. Or the other option, and probably the better option, Control Z. Just do a shell of the underside, and let's call it 2 millimeters thick. Bam. Or that's not going to work in this case. We need to make that 3, I guess. Yeah, 3, because I made it 3 millimeters wider than the original sketch or the original profile. That's all. So you're dealing with the same thing in 2 different ways. Basically, if one gives you trouble, that's the way to create the other one. All I'm trying to do is create a hollow cylinder that is open on one side and closed on the other. That's all. So from there, create thread. Oh, so now select the inside face of that cylinder. Then since it's the same, it's going to create 24 millimeters. So an M24 thread, same deal. I'll select modeled on this. You can see it's all threaded inside of there. Click OK. Bam. That's it. The cap is now threaded. The bottle is now threaded. Did some weird stuff. Neat. So that's basically it. Now, on the model that I showed you here, I created some texture on this. And all I did for that was on the top here, created a sketch. I know, create a sketch, make a sketch, make a sketch. And I just made a little half circle on this. So at the edge of that profile, let's just hide the body again. I just made a circle that's about, I don't know, 1 millimeter. Yeah, sure. Finish sketch. Ah, crap. I forgot I had the whole thing active. That might cause a problem. Let's that's finish sketch. That's okay. Sorry, I realized what I messed up there. And when I created that sketch, I had the full project active, so that can cause problems. But let's go down and see if I can still make it work. But you should make sure that the object you're working on, the component you're working on, is the one that's active. So all right. So that little tiny sketch there, I used an extrude, and then I just cut down through it. Cut down through the bottle. I don't know. Sure. Tell you what, we'll do to extent to object to the bottom, and then we will, yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Select OK. There we go. Now, just that one little feature, we're going to duplicate the crap out of that feature. Pattern, circle pattern. Select type. I want features. I just want the inside of that. Now, you saw it kept trying to also select the inside threads. Be careful when you're selecting stuff. Select axis. Now, the problem is I'm using my origin axis, which is all the way down here. I don't know why it doesn't just extend that axis all the way up. There you go. I made 3 of them. Let's make a whole bunch more. Let's say, I don't know, 25. A lot more. 45. More. Too many patterns. Computer's freaking out. Just doing a guessing game here. Oh God, no, not 600 of them. All right, we'll go with looks like last one we'll try. There we go, 70. Okay, that works. Select OK. It's gonna populate that. There you go. So I just repeated the crap out of that one little cut, and it makes it like it's the fluted surface there. So just an easy way to make something like that. Kind of neat. All right. So now we've got both the bottle and the cap. Where'd it go? I hit it. That's why. So let's save. Cap. Done. So that's what I mean by it is really, once you get the hang of just like you're just creating sketches, just stacking them, and sometimes the loft gets tricky. The threads automatically will automatically be created, but sometimes again you have to kind of juggle some of the steps just because of the way they operate. Now the last part with this is using a joint tool to connect the cap and the bottle. Now when I made this, you can see that the cap is floating just above, or rather just at the top of the project there. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the joint to plop it into place, but also let it move. So remember, when we select, oops, I didn't mean to select component. I meant to select joint. When you select joint, remember that the first thing you select is what will move. The second is to where it will move. So where I need to select actually is the inside center of the cap. So to do that, hide the body entirely of the vessel. Now I can get inside much more easily. Mousing over the inside there, you can see it keeps wanting to select the very bottom there. That gets problematic. Let's try hiding some sketches. There we go. Now it's letting me select inside. If it's not letting you select inside, try hiding the sketches. That might be the reason why. So now you can see it's highlighting up inside. Great. I want to make sure I'm selecting. Which one is that? I don't know why it's giving me that plus. Oh, it's because it's the center of the threads. I want the plus, not that square. I want the plus. So it should snap right over. Select it. Great. Unhide the vessel. And again, if you're having trouble selecting stuff, just go ahead and hide the cap. Now I need to select the center of the bottle, not the threads, the bottle. And because those threads are there, obviously you can see my mouse selection bouncing all over the place. This is where the lock plane command works really well. Mouse over the upper lip of the threads here. Press and hold Control. That locks your selection to only anything existing on that plane. Now I can mouse out here and you can see it's not trying to grab any of those threads. I'm still holding Control down. I want that plus sign, select there. Unhide the cap. You see how it dropped down now. Great, that's what I wanted. Now the problem here is that's a rigid joint. Animate and it just shakes all over the place because it's showing you that it's supposed to be glued together. Now before we used revolute. That is just a revolve. In this case, we want cylindrical. It's both. It revolves and it goes up and down. We'll fix that in a moment. Select OK. Now we got the joint in place. Great. Let's go over and edit the joint. Animate again, does weird stuff. Except, wait, where's my movement? It's just rotating. That's because it will only show one of the it's two movements. It's rotation and a slide. It'll only show one at a time. You've got motion, rotate. Fine. Let it rotate free. 360. That's okay. Slide is what we want to adjust because it's going to go well above and well below. All right. Let's stop that because that's getting frustrating. So from here, basically all I want you to do is just select minimum, maximum. Let's go up. And then let's show our minimum where it actually locks in place. Now, move it up and out, and it goes up and out of the way. Great. If you want to have that go even further, that's perfectly fine. I don't know. Let's make it 40. There you go. So it goes way up, stops down at the bottom. Great. That's it. Okay. Select OK. Last thing, don't forget to lock the body in place. So right click there. It's not going to show up for you. This is why it was important to really lock and ground the component. So let's see if it'll let us lock here. It will not. So this is why it's really important to, instead of like what I did is I created this body here and it's part of the whole project. The joint works. It's between two components, but because it's not its own component, I cannot ground it. So when I try to drag and drop this bottle, going to work, but I can still move the bottle around too. Oh, well, be. Well, I stand with my foot in my mouth. It's not moving at all. Maybe we put enough constraints onto it where it can't move at all. All right. I stand corrected. Either way, you should make sure to put it in its own component. That way you can ground it properly and it won't cause any, or hopefully it'll cause fewer errors. Okay. Let's Control Z that, move it back in place. All right. Save, joint, adding. All right. So this is the last step. I want you to put a handle on it. Now you have multiple ways of creating handles. I'm just going to start a new project just to show you the variations on the same thing. So let's save. Example handles. All right. So I'm going to create a sketch. I know everyone sketch. And first I'm going to make just a fit point spline. So let's pretend that there's a bottle in here and we're just going to make a simple handle. Okay. That's it. There's my kind of like mug handle profile. First up is the pipe tool. Pipe generates its own dimension around a path. That line is my path. Select the pipe tool, select my path. I can expand the size of the pipe. So it's just a circle, just a direct circle. You see the toolbox here? You have your distance. Distance is the length of your path. It goes from 0 to 1. It's a percentage. 0%, which is not at all, and 100%. 0 to 1. I don't know why instead of percent it's just a numeric expression, but there we are. So that's in case you drew a whole path and you only wanted it to go so far, you just don't put in a whole number. If you want it to go all the way, press 1. You have options. Could be a circle, could be a square, could be a triangle. This is for making different stuff. You can even make it hollow. Tiny thing. And that you need to select the thickness. In this case, pipe, obviously, in this case, we're just going to make it solid. So no worries there. New body. Sure. All right. That's a pipe. We'll just do new component. Select OK. Drops it out. Pipe. All right. So let's hide that. Open up the sketch again. Next one up is a sweep. Now, a sweep is the same thing, only you create your own profile. And to do that, it needs to be a profile along this plane. So let's create a sketch facing that line. And let's say, I don't know, let's make it a ellipse. I selected right on the edge of or right on that end point there because I started it there. Ellipses sometimes do some weird things with their selection process. All right, I don't know, let's go say it is sure 10. Okay. And then let's make it sure 22 wide, whatever. Okay, great. That's it. Now I've created my own profile. I could make this an amorphous blob if I want. Same deal. So for that matter, tell you what, here, let's just cut like a section out of that. I don't know. Just create a circle. Fine. And we'll trim a chunk out of that. There we go. Finish sketch. It's not quite an amorphous blob, but it's a unique feature. All right. So the other option is sweep. Same thing as a pipe tool, only it creates your own selected profile along that path. Select my profile, exact same line for a path. There you go. Same deal. You can see how it creates that feature all the way along in a consistent manner all the way down. You again have your options in this case, much like when we were playing with Extrude and such, how you could taper it and things. You can actually play with this quite a lot. You can add twists to it. You can add a taper to it. Let's say a 1 degree taper, way too much. Let's say -1. It's going to flare outward. What's going on here? Apparently not. Back to 0. I don't know, 0.5. Yep, too big. Probably have to be like 0.01. There we go. Very small. It's not a very large object. So let's just say no taper. Twist, however, you can actually add a twist to it. So it just twisted the whole thing 180 degrees. This is actually how you could create things like propellers and things like that. But we're not going to mess with that right now. Let's just say 0, no twist. It's just a handle. Cool. New component. Select OK. I'm just doing this just to throw out the example things. This is a sweep. All right. Last example. You can create a loft on a path. With that, what do we know about lofts? You need 2 profiles. Go from one to the other. Let's unhide that sketch. You can see my profile there. Number 1, create one more. We'll do the same, and I'll make something down here. Let's just go with a direct rectangle. I don't know. Sure. That's fine. Now, the trick to this is you notice that that's not on that path. That will cause a problem. Let's finish sketch. What that means is you need to actually have your sketch attached to the path for a loft to work. So all that means you just move that thing. Oops. Move sketch objects. And just move it over. That's all. I want to select the pivot is my center there. Beep, boppity, boop. Snap that over. And what you want to try to do is make sure that your profile is aligned as best you can with that sketch. It doesn't have to be exact, but it should be as close as you can. Select OK. All right. Now I have 2 paths, or sorry, I have 2 profiles. Now I can create a loft. I select my 2 profiles. And oh God, what is that? That's not what we're trying to do. It's going to create some weird stuff. Oh, I accidentally selected the point, not the profile. There we are. So that's not exactly what I'm aiming for. You can select a rail. So the selection little box down here, rails, guide type, not rails, but center line, and you select your path. There you go. Now we have a loft that transitions from our ellipse with a chunk missing out of it and transitions to a rectangle, which is essentially how I was going to show you how to make a ring. But there you go. New component. Okay. Loft. So those are examples. I'll leave that for everybody. Essentially, what I want you to do is make some kind of a handle onto your vessel in one of those of your choosing. If you go with a pipe because it's an immediate thing, yeah, that's fine. I get it. But know that you can make custom handles, things like that. Where did my project go? That's not the one I was working on. There we are. So with that, that means all you need to do is create a sketch out here. Make sure the whole project is selected. Sketch on your flat profile. Now, to ensure that you're actually lining up with stuff, use a project tool. Borrow your new profile. I want to select out there, select the body. I don't need to select the bottom because I'm making the handle somewhere out here. Okay. Now when I hide that vessel, oh, I made it on the other side. Well, that's just irritating and insulting. All right, so I'll make it on that side. Make a fit point spline. Yeah, connect somewhere over there. Boopity boopity boop 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 boop. Okay. Select OK. Why did it hide everything? Where's my sketch? Where did my sketch go? Where's my sketch? Oh, I have them all hidden. That's why. There you go. And you can use a pipe tool if you want. Right there. I don't know. Let's see how big to make this. Way too big. That could be problematic. Now it's making it as a different color just because it's a different thing right now because I still have new components selected. Now, one quick thing. Look at how that's going. That's going to cause a problem. There's a hollow section there. So we're going to go with new body. Do not have it join yet. Select OK. Now, the reason it's doing that is because it's only going from end to end. So what that probably means is your sketch, you might want to edit that sketch. Take that line, move it inward just a little bit. But because it's locked, probably won't work. So we'll just Control Z that. So instead, what you'll have to do is actually move the body. Ugh, saving everything. Now, you're going to get some weird stuff happening here. So what you should do, what you're going to need to do is just select a new pivot point. Let's see if I can get one that isn't going to go crazy here. I'm just trying to select something somewhere. Maybe if I hide the lofted vessel, it'll give me a little bit clearer way of selecting. There we go. I just need that pipe tool right there. And problem is, see how it's trying to orient? It's going to try to move it. When I move, it's going to try to bring it up in a diagonal. That's not what I want. So this really is something that's better used or better fixed as the profile itself. So let's try it though. See what happens here. As I move that over, now see it's affixed to the actual profile. It's not going to let you do it. So what you do need to do, go back, edit that sketch. In order to get this sketch to move, you got to break these constraints. So right click on the points themselves. I know I'm throwing a lot at y'all. Delete those coincidences, and you should be able to move it now. Repeat, delete coincidence. God, there's a lot of lines there. There we go. So I just moved. All I did is I just drug that sketch in a little bit. So it's inside the body now. Select OK, let it recalculate. Now, when I unhide the body, now it's kind of moved in there. So the pipe tool is not going to be the best option. The other option, of course, is also editing that sketch and just playing with the with your handlebars. If you rotate that in a little bit, you're going to get a better match. Now, why didn't that work? Pipe, edit feature. There you go. Why didn't that recalculate? That was weird. Okay, that was weird. Don't know why I did that, but there you go. So now you can join the two. That's all. I'm just mess with the handle a little bit. So whatever you want to do for the handle, more power to you. Let's join the two. Target body, tool body, connectify. Boom. There we go. Now it's joined. And from there, you can always like add your fillets like at the bottom there. Yeah, let's make it roundy round. I don't know. 5. Kind of big. That's okay. Stuff like that. So the handle is completely invented. That's fine. Whatever. It's simply just a different way of using those same tools. All right. So I knew we threw a lot at you, but it's very, very much the same tools you've been using and you just used. Now we're just adding the loft on top. This is a different way of generating bodies based off of different profiles. You can use the loft tool to create the differently shaped body of the bottle. You can use lofts, sweeps, or pipes to create the handle. Same deal, just a different option on the same toolbox. Joint that we just went over connects the bottle cap and the top. Let's hide some stuff here because it's getting really confusing. And the cap inside and the bottle top as well both need to be threaded. That is simply using the same dimensions on both and using the thread tool. Very little to it. It just automatically generates. If your computer gets a little bit slow, make sure to uncheck the checkbox on the thread toolbox, and it won't create all of the threads. It'll just save your computer a little bit of generating power. That's all. So, soft do for this is next week. We're going to move on, but if you got it done, awesome. If you still need some help, just let me know. So, very best of luck with you on all this stuff. Again, using the same stuffs, and if you have any questions, please do ask.